Let's do 12 volt. So, there's a few things that you need to know regardless. All right. First of all, here we go. When we're doing 12 volt and we have an engine on a stand, we kind of have to make our own system up a little bit. And that's okay. But first of all, with these high compression ratio, large piston or large bore diesel engines, which that goes as slow as things like a 5.9 liter Cummins, you need 2 batteries, regardless of whether it's 12 or 24 volt, because you need the amperes. Now, a 12 volt system, it is wired in parallel. All right, if you remember from basic electrical, parallel means that you have 2 connections to the same thing without interrupting. We'll talk about series in another video. All right, so first thing first, we're going to have our batteries. I've given these 12.8 for this, and they're both 850 cold cranking amp batteries. And that matters because when we're wired in parallel, unlike in series, our voltage should stay the same, and our cold cranking amps should increase. All right, and this is what matters. Like, this is what allows the flow, but this is what matters. Because if we don't have this, it won't matter. I recently, should have recorded it, tested a battery that had 12.8 volts on it, but it would only test out with 315 cold cranking amps. And whichever battery is your weakest, okay, which we need to know this number. We don't necessarily have to know this number, but we need to know this number. Whichever battery is weakest is your only available power, okay? So if one of these is 11 and the other one's 12.8, we only have 11 volts, okay? Which means whether we have a good batteries, good cold cranking amps, doesn't matter anymore. All right. Another thing about batteries is they need to match. If you have an 850 and a 675, you're going to have problems because you're limited. You only have what's available in the smallest battery. See, this is an issue on trucks all the time. All right. So we wire in parallel. We're going to hook positive to positive and negative to negative. Now, this is, if you remember from schematics, that means these are not touching each other, okay? Positive is going to go up here to our big old starter, and this is the solenoid, the big post on the solenoid. Solenoid has another big post with a strap that goes to the starter body. Do not hook anything to that. Don't take anything off of it, all right? I know some of those starters have had the nuts robbed off of them. I'm not a very good cameraman, in case you're wondering. All right, this one should be ground. Back to our positive. This is signal wire, okay? Come off of our positive post here, and we're going to go to battery on our key, okay? It's going to be our supply. Don't come over. You can do this, but it's better to do it off of one, okay? So we're not causing issues. We're just going to keep it simple. On our ground, we're going negative to negative, and then we can hook 2 here, but the way I had to draw it looks like this. We're going to go to engine ground. We're going to have a ground bolt, and we're going to go here. So you can figure out how you want to hook that up, but it's very, very important that you allow sufficient ground. 90% of the time when you have a problem, it is because you have insufficient ground, even on the fully mechanical engines. Now, we go over here to our key switch. Ignition means key on power, whether we're cranking or not. If you have an ECM, that's where it needs to get its power from. If you have a fuel pump, that's where it needs to get its power from. Not accessory, not battery. It needs to get it from ignition. If you have a mechanical one without an ECM, and you've got a fuel shutoff solenoid, then that's where it needs to get power from. Y'all should remember that from your little 3.9 liter B series. All right. S is start. That's our signal wire. We say S is start, but we also say S is signal. Signal, because signal comes over here to the little post on the starter, and that's where we're going to kick it off, okay? That's 12 volt. It's really pretty simple, all right? The big thing I'm going to tell y'all before you turn any keys, when you get everything hooked up, double check everything. Keep your tools on hand to disconnect batteries in case of an emergency. Make sure that you have your tools on hand. Remember I said we want to only hook to one battery, okay? If you have your tool on hand and you have an emergency, unhook negative first. You can unhook this one. We've cut power. Unhook that one, right? You're going to unhook both of those, okay? Once you do that, you've cut power. So you need to have tool on hand. Do not set wrenches, screwdrivers, or ratchets on top of those batteries. Even though you're trying to have them on hand, do not do it. Because when that engine tries to kick off and something's going wrong, somebody's going to panic and they're going to kick a tool across there and blow a battery up. I've seen it happen. I'll get y'all another video on 24 volt. One thing I am going to tell y'all, when y'all are doing this, be very, very self-aware. If anything is damaged or gets wired up incorrectly, There is a 100% chance that you will eventually accidentally trigger a starter to roll over without the key because something wasn't hooked up correctly. Also, make sure when y'all are doing these key switches that y'all have the key out of them and don't lay them on stuff. You got live battery power to the back of it, and you lay it on that engine and it will ground out, and you can have all kinds of issues because of that. Be especially careful of your ECM. When I tell you that the blown ECMs on those engines are because of people ignoring these warnings, I'm telling you the truth.